Good morning. On behalf of those of us who are visiting from abroad, let me just say what an honor it is for us to gather here in Westminster in this forum and to be given a voice and to be able to speak here in this way on this topic. I'm especially grateful for the theme of women and youth. As Gadir Hani and Sorale Rosen were speaking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict this morning, I was hit with this very powerful sense that if and when that most difficult crisis ever reached something like a resolution, it's probably going to be the influence of women and youth that help accomplish that. I'm very grateful for the UK Forum Working Group on Gender, the APPG Group on Genocide. Fleur Anderson, thank you for your leadership there. And let me just say that as you were talking about your, was it sister-in-law, sister who works with children, Eleanor Roosevelt believed that the most important human rights institution in the world was the family, and that the most important human rights forum was the kitchen table. And I really think she was right. You reminded us of that. I am the director of the International Center for Law and Religion Studies, and on behalf of my colleagues and our students, many of whom are here in helping capacities, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to be here. And in particular, I'd like to acknowledge the key role of our Associate Director, Paul Carey, who has really been the central figure in pulling together not just this event, but all of the events over the last few days relating to freedom of religion and belief. I'm only going to ask for a round of applause for one person, but that really needs to be Paul. Baroness Kennedy, let me assure you that us men are capable of being bad even without the help of women. But certainly there are possibilities on both ends of the spectrum there. One word you used in your talk is going to echo in my mind, and that is the word and the way you said the word yearning. Because I think that captures something very important about the stakes of what we are all here to try to discuss and promote. Freedom of religion and belief, freedom of thought, conscience, and belief for all people, religious and non-religious, people of every denomination and every dimension of life. Yamini, when you were talking about Sri Lanka, all of us are mindful of the persecution of Christians that happens there and are grateful for voices like yours standing up for those communities. Dean Cole, welcome to the Religious Freedom Initiative, Religious Liberty Initiative. We're so grateful to you and Stephanie Barclay, my former colleague at Brigham Young University Law School, and we're grateful to have you join the law school group of institutions that are really committed to and eager to work together on issues of freedom of religion and belief. And to Elder Quentin Cook, who I sustain as an apostle of Jesus Christ, hearing about the legal framework that made it possible for your great-grandfather to come to this place in 1837 and follow the dictates of his conscience, gives us a not just historical but a very personal dimension to understanding the stakes of what we're talking about here today. This panel is about legal frameworks, and it's not the most glamorous topic. If you want to find religious discrimination and persecution in the world, the first place we look is religious registration laws. Are you able to be recognized as a legal entity or not? We also look at land use and zoning. Are you able to get a permit to build a mosque or a synagogue or a church or a temple? And these are the places, not very glamorous, not very high profile, that most of the work of religious freedom takes place. Yes, there is an important constitutional dimension, but the actual daily work takes place in, again, these much smaller places. For the last 5 years, we at the International Center for Law and Religion Studies have been participating in what we call the Human Dignity Initiative. This began as a partnership with Jan Figel, the EU Special Envoy for Freedom of Religion and Belief outside the EU, and a conversation about what we could do to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which took place in 1948. And we began a journey that culminated in the Punta del Este Declaration on Human Dignity for Everyone, Everywhere, which was an effort to re-articulate, reaffirm, and reorient human rights discourse back to its most basic fundamental principle, human dignity. And this, we think, has been quite important because one thing we noticed in 2018 was that human rights and religious freedom had become quite politicized in ways that we think are unhealthy. And there was also a sense of human rights skepticism that bordered into hostility in many quarters, and also some human rights maximalism, which mistakenly took the tact of thinking that human rights were the solution to every problem that exists in the world. As we began focusing on human dignity, I was drawn to Dignitatis Humanae, the Vatican II Declaration on Religious Freedom. In that declaration, it says, near the beginning, the human person has a right to religious freedom. That is a declarative statement. And it then explains that the Council further declares that the right to religious freedom has its foundation in the very dignity of the human person, as this dignity is known through the revealed Word of God and by reason itself. Now, you don't have to be Catholic to appreciate the power and magnitude of that declaration, because what it does is it draws a direct link between human dignity, the right to be human, and freedom of religion and belief, the right to live out our deepest conscientious convictions, not just in the interior forum of the heart or mind, but in the external forum of the world in which we live. As we now look forward to the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 2023, there are a few things that we hope might happen. We've been working with Evelina Ochab, who is well known to the APPG groups here, on the possibility of promoting a United Nations resolution on human dignity, in addition to the declarations on human rights, which are commemorated through the Human Rights Day. In addition to that, there are 3 major projects our center is working on in collaboration with many others. The first of these has to do with Islamic perspectives on human dignity. It turns out that in the Holy Quran, karama, human dignity, is a very important concept. And Islamic perspectives on human dignity are rich and varied and incredibly insightful, and I think largely unknown to those of us who are not Muslims. And so one of the things we want to do is to create a platform for a high-level discussion of Islamic perspectives on human dignity. That initiative will be led by Professor Saeed, who is an Afghan law professor of human rights, also a Muslim, also a refugee, who, with his family of 5, have arrived at Brigham Young University for the next 3 years to work as a visiting fellow. And so with his leadership and with the partnership of many different varieties of Muslims around the world, we want to bring to the fore Islamic perspectives on human dignity. Second is Chinese perspectives on human dignity. It turns out that the great classical Chinese schools of thought, Taoism, Moism, Confucianism, all have very rich concepts of dignity that are almost completely not understood in China, much less in the world. And if you talk about dignity in China today, it's very challenging because the conversation immediately shifts to the dignity of the nation and how China has been humiliated by foreigners over the course of history and how we need to assert Chinese dignity. And so the importance of orienting the Chinese understanding of dignity towards individual human dignity is of great importance. The third is a project on civilizational dialogue on human dignity. This is to make sure that we bring in non-religious voices and global voices to think about human dignity as a civilizational concept and how different civilizations have understood human dignity. I mentioned these three because I hope that one or two or three of you in this room are thinking, wow, I'd like to be a part of one of those three. And if that was you that had that feeling, I want to invite you to contact me because we're just in the planning stages of putting these projects together. Now, let me echo Elder Cook in saying that when I look around this room, one of the things that I love is that I'm at above the average age of those in the room rather than below it, which is so often the case in discussions of freedom of religion and even human rights. One program our center does each year is an Oxford workshop for young scholars on religion and the rule of law. We'll be holding that workshop at Christ Church in 2 weeks and running for 3 weeks. What we do is we bring 15 emerging scholars from around the world, people at least with their PhD, young professors, and we give them a 3-week crash course on how to teach a class about religion and the rule of law. And we also bring in 3 full-time legal writing professors to do Oxford tutorials to help these young scholars crack the code of how to publish English language scholarly articles in English scholarly journals, English language scholarly journals. And I can tell you that of the 2 classes of young scholars that have already completed, we see that that experience of publishing in English has helped launch careers in remarkable ways. I mention that because the call for applicants for that program will be in December. So I just invite you to have your eyes open for that. So thank you very much, and thank you to the 4 APPGs for their sponsorship.